Are we live? I don't know. Oh, I think we're live. My YouTube all of a sudden just crashed. So I'm scrambling to get it back up. So hopefully back up. So somebody tell me if I'm live. If we're live, we have David from Michigan here and Carlos from Marietta, Georgia, saying, howdy from humid Marietta, Georgia, USA. Well, welcome to RockSim Live. This is where we talk about RockSim, a RockSim Pro, and the Launch Visualizer. I hope we're live. It looks like we're live. David says we're live. Good. Yeah, just a lot going on today. We are getting ready to go to Narrum this afternoon. Once we're done here, I'll pack my bags and head out to Narrum. So I'm looking forward to it. A lot of exciting stuff going to happen this week at Narrum. We're gonna launch some rockets for Apogee. We got a Nike Hercules that's going to take off. Let's see. I can show you that in a minute. And Terry Wheelock is here from Wheelock's World, and he says it's rocket design time with Timmy. Yeah, so this is RockSim Live. So if you have a question about using RockSim, go ahead and put it into the chat, and we'll answer that because I don't have anything else to talk about today. So let me know what you want to talk about. I got the monitor right here that I'm looking at if I'm looking away from the screen. Let me show you my screen here. Desktop screen, there we go. Okay, so if you are brand new to RockSim, and we do get a lot of people that watch us on replay, and thank you for watching. And if you're not familiar with RockSim, you get it here at apogeerockets.com. That's our web address. And then we have this scrolling banner bar here where there's RockSim 11. That's our latest current version. We are working on the next version. I was talking with the programmer yesterday, and he's moving along. It's not anything urgent. Since we just came out with version 11, we're just kind of brainstorming for the future. You know, what do we want it to do? What would you like RockSim to do? Within reason, of course. We can't make it into a CAD software. I wish we could, importing CAD files. That's just not the way it's going to work. But we can do designing rockets and simulating rockets. And in that realm, what would you like to see? What features that RockSim doesn't have right now that you would like? And we will consider them for a future version, since we're just starting work on that. But version 11 is, our latest version was a bug fix version. So now it's like really stable. So there's not an urgency that we have to get anything out like really quick. So, Terry says, can Tim design his favorite rocket for us? I don't even know what my favorite rocket is anymore. My favorite rocket is the next one. He says, I want RockSim to design a rocket that doesn't crash on me. Well, that's the purpose of it, is to have rockets that you are pretty sure are going to be consistent when you launch them. However, we can't predict how they're going to go if you don't build quality rockets. You have to put the fins on straight, and you have to make sure that they stay attached. And we try to help you with that. In fact, if you're on our website, if you go to the how-to and guides, and then come down here to advanced construction videos, and you can see we have 414 of them right now. And if you'd like to see them all, just click on all videos right there. And this is the archive, all 414. And so we're here to try to help you, build your rockets correctly And so these are, you know, how-to videos. Like this one is here is how to remove a stuck coupler from a tube, which happens on occasion. So we're trying to help with the building of your rockets, where RockSim helps you with the design, getting prepared. And this is, you know, getting your rockets built, repairing them if you have crashed them, so to get them back into circulation again. Yeah, so if you're brand new to RockSim, and I always talk about this first, go to the how-to and guides, come down here to software, and in this menu are, you know, this is our main menu for RockSim. You know, where to get the free trial, 30 days free trial you can use, you know, the frequently asked questions, system requirements, version history, tutorials, our RockSim live training, which is what we're doing now. If you click on that, that takes you to the archives for the training sessions. So we're on episode 175 today. So all 174 previous episodes have been cataloged, what we've talked about, and right here is a timestamp on the YouTube video. So if you click on the YouTube video and you go to that specific time, that is where we started talking about that topic. So it gives you a list of, you know, this is just a large, you know, archive of information about RockSim. And right now is when we're adding to it. So if you got a specific question, we'll be happy to answer it, even if we've talked about it before. Oh, we've got Kaleman says he's watching from Richmond. That's a new name. So I don't recall that one. And Carlos in Marietta, Georgia, he says he's got the first RockSim question. He says, look up NACA RM-10. So let's do that. NACA, N-A-C-A RM-10. And what is all this stuff popping up on me? I don't know what an RM10 is. RM10. Oh, I said TM10. RM10. Let's type it right. RM10. I got this image here, but I don't know if that's the NACA RM10. And what's this one here? RML51. It's a wing body model. The M2F2, that's a fun one. Oh, we can't do that one in RockSim. What about this one here? Oh, that's another lifting body. That looks like the old National Aerospace hypersonic wave rider. Terry asks, once I design a rocket, will RockSim alert me and say it's going to crash only if it's unstable. If it's stable, then you have to build it correctly. There's a lot of NACA stuff here. I'm looking for this this image, NACA RM-10. I'm not getting it. Give me, if you know. What looked interesting was this one here. And this one, could you design that in RockSim? And the answer is probably yeah. We could probably do that one. I'm just seeing if there's any RM10s here. Most all of these designs here can be done in RockSim. That one could probably even be done. That one can be done. Let's try one. I'm looking for something interesting. So it's got to have a round body. Let's do a harpoon like that. Let's visit that page. And this is, somebody made a 3D model of it. The only question is, I don't know what the size is. They're selling this for $10. We could try designing this. Let's give it a try. So I'm going to go to RockSim. I'm going to be in RockSim Pro. Let me move this. Oops, there's RockSim. I'm going to move this image from that screen to over here so that it's not in the way, so that I can see it, but you can't. Okay, to design a new rocket. So we're designing a brand new rocket. So go up here to the new, and it's going to ask you if you want to save your previous design, and I'm going to say no. All right, so now we're going to start with a nose cone. So what we're going to do is we're going to go along these top tabs, and first is the rocket design attributes, and this is a harpoon. So I'm giving it a name, military rocket, and I'm going to use the RockSim CP location, the number of stages. This is a single stage. So that's all I really need to fill out there. Then we're going to go to the rocket design components. Now this is where we're going to start adding parts. So here, when you first start, everything's going to be added to the sustainer. So sustainer means it's the part that coasts to the peak altitude. And so when you're starting adding components, these are what you can select from over here. And I'm going to start with a nose cone. And when you click on that, it always looks in the database first. So right now this database means nothing to me. So I'm going to close that, and then this is the screen where we're going to design the nose cone. Let me just double check, make sure that I'm still with you here. Okay. And we need to select, we're going to fill out all this information here, but it's a lot easier to start with what size tube are we going to put this in. So let's say we want to put this into a BT60. So if you're not familiar with the nomenclature for rocketry, BT stands for body tube, and this is the Estes designation. BT60 would be, 1.63 inches in diameter, which if you've never designed a rocket before, you have no idea what these diameters are. But it's a common tube. So I'm going here to the shoulder. Now the shoulder is the part of the nose cone that slides into the tube. And I'm going to choose what size tube that nose cone is going to go into. So that's what I'm going to do here. Choose a compatible body tube. And again, it brings up a list of tubes. So these are just tubes. And here is the manufacturer, Apogee. There's Always Ready Rocketry, Estes. So if you wanted to do a BT60, you'd come down to the description and you could look for BT60. And it tells me the inside diameter, the outside diameter, and what it's made out of. So at this point, I don't really care what the diameters are. It's just I know I'm going to use that tube, and when I'm going to the store to buy one, I'm going to say, give me a BT60. And if the person on the other end is knowledgeable, they'll know what you're talking about. And if they don't know what you're talking about when you say BT60, call us at Apogee. We'll take care of you. We know what that means. Okay, so I clicked on it, and I'm going to add. It says that this shoulder is going to go into a BT60. So what we're seeing right now is just the shoulder part. We don't have the nose cone part. So I'm going to go back to the General tab here, and now we're going to start changing some of these parameters. For example, length, there's a slider bar here. You can just grab that slider bar, and you can see as I'm moving that slider bar, it's changing the shape of the nose cone. So now it's kind of sort of looking like a nose cone. And we need to select a material, and I'm going to choose, what would I choose? Let's choose polystyrene. What I think, this is going to be a custom rocket. So I'm thinking about, how would I going to make this? Traditional materials are balsa wood or plastic. And now with 3D printers, you might seriously think about printing a nose cone. And RockSim can help you with that. But the material, you have to select something from the list that has a density that's similar to what you're going to use when you 3D print it. And I guess we need to get some materials that have 3D printer qualities. But I think the closest for me right now would be either polypropylene or polystyrene. So that's why I'm going to choose polystyrene. It's not. We could make it a solid nose cone, but I think we'll probably make it hollow. And if you're going to make it hollow, what's the thickness of the wall thickness going to be? So I'm going to say 0.06, and that's pretty beefy. When I did that, you'll see that my center of gravity moved. It's going to be polished surface. But now we're going back to our design here, and let's look at that nose cone. So it looks rather short. It's not conical. I would call that, we'll figure something out. So we're going to go to the shape. And here are the shapes we have to work with. So conical is what we have right now. Ogive looks like that. And that's closer to this nose cone here. But it's a lot shorter, so we need to make this nose cone shorter. So let me get that out of the way. So let's go here to the length and just slide the slider bar. Ooh, now that's not too bad, actually. Does it look like this one right here? Not too bad. Let's see if I can get this over here and bring that up. So we're comparing that nose cone with this one. The only difference is this one has a little bit of a rounded tip. And I can't round the tip in RockSim, but I think that looks okay. Now, when I'm looking at this, it's kind of like out of proportion. Oh, excuse me. The shoulder seems a little bit too long, so I'm going to shorten that shoulder. So here's the length of the shoulder right here. Right now it's 2.38 inches. Let's make it 1 inch. So I'm just typing in 1 inch and hit the tab key. You can see now that I'm much shorter. I think I'll go a little longer. Let's make it 1.25. I can live with that. All right, so that's a nose cone. Now let's give it some color. Right now the 2D color is blue, and I'm going to change it to that color there. And my 3D color is here, and I'm going to change it to white. Now click OK. I'm just checking the comments here. Johan de Sloper is here from the Netherlands. He says that metallic fin thing was awesome. So what's he talking about? He's saying, I just did a video that we released this week. Let me go back to this screen here. And if you're on the Apogee website, and I showed you this earlier, how to get here to the videos, you go to How To and Guides, come down here to Advanced Construction Videos, and you can click on All Videos, or what we're talking about is video number 414, and this is applying a metallic finish to your rockets. And this video is part 1 and part 2. I thought part 2 Didn't part 2 come out this week? Let's try 415. Nope. I guess part 2 comes out next week. Okay, so part 2 comes out next week. You have to see. So part 1 was getting ready to apply the metallic finish, and part 2 is actually applying it. And it's applied to just a sheet of balsa wood. So that's what we're talking about. And so thank you, Johan, for saying that, because I put a lot of effort into my videos. And it's nice that people actually watch them. Yeah, so part 2 is coming out on next Tuesday. If you would like to be notified when it's available, go to the Apogee website and subscribe to the newsletter, because that's how we notify people that they're available. Anyhow, so I made this nose cone, and I'm looking at it in 3D now because I changed the color to white. And that looks pretty close to this harpoon rocket. So I like that. So I'm going to say, let's use that as my nose cone. All right, so now we've added the nose cone, and now the next thing we're going to add that body tube to the harpoon missile. And I know it's a BT-60, so I'm looking for something that says BT-60, and that was Estes. Now, the equivalent at Apogee is a 41.6 millimeter nose cone. So we use actual dimensions, and that's the inside diameter of that nose cone. BT-60 is the... How did BT-60 come about, and why is it such an odd size? Well, it's the actual size of the... when Vern Estes started Estes, he had a paper towel roll, and that paper towel roll he called the BT-60. I don't know where the 60 came from, but that size was the diameter of a paper towel roll back in like 1958. I think they're pretty close still to this day, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. But the dimension of that tube has stayed the same. The outside diameter is 1.64 inches. The inside diameter is 1.59. So now we're going to select that tube and click OK. And you can see it added the tube to our rocket. And I'm just moving things around here so you can see it. And this is in 3D. I'm going to go back to 2D over here. And now we're going to change the length. So now I've got to estimate how long this tube is right here. And, you know, I'm just doing a comparison by eyeball. And, you know, what I have here is actually not bad. I might extend it just a smidge. So I'm at 19 inches now. And we're going to, I'm just going through this tab. So the database, that's where we selected it from. The mass override. If this tube doesn't weigh what your tube is, then you would use a mass override, but we don't need to. The color, let's make it orange in 2D, and in 3D, let's make it white, but what I want to do is make it off-white just a little bit, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. So it still looks like it's white, but it has a touch of black in it. And then click OK. Now the reason I did that is when I'm in 3D, I want to look at the rocket and I want to be able to tell where the nose cone stops and where the tube starts. If I change that color to more white, you know, if I make it all the way white like this, it's harder to tell where the nose cone starts and where the nose cone stops and the tube starts. By making it a little bit, have a little bit of black in it, or any other color, it's just easier to tell. So that's why I did it. And now I'm going to say OK. All right, so now we have our body tube, and now we're going to start adding fins. Now on this rocket, we have 2 sets of fins. We have the fins up here in the front, and then up down here in the back. So let's start with the back ones. And so what we're going to do is make sure the body tube is highlighted here, and then you'll notice that the fin button is highlighted. Now we have a choice of 4 different types of fins. We have this one here, which will allow us to do trapezoids and ellipses. Custom fins allows you to do any flat fin shape that could be anything, including trapezoids or ellipses. We have ringtails, which is kind of like a ring around the outside, and then we have tube fins, which are tubes that are glued around the central tube. So for this rocket, both of these fins are actually trapezoids. So I can use a trapezoid, just the regular fin shape for that. And I always recommend that. I know a lot of people, they like to use the custom fin shape for everything, but there's some advantages in processing power to just using, the simple trapezoid shape. So whenever you select a new part, it always looks in the database, and that's why this showed up here. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And if you'll notice, when we go back to our design, RockSim has thrown a set of fins on there, just kind of as a starting point. So now we're going to modify those. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. And we're going to call the aft fins so we can tell them apart. And if we look at our rocket right here, it has 4 fins in the back, and it has also 4 fins in the front. So I'm going to do my fin count as 4 fins. And now we're going to start doing the shape. All right, so here is the root chord. Let's call this one, I'm just eyeballing it from what I'm looking at here, 1.5. Okay, the tip has to be smaller than that. Let's call it 1.25. The sweep, okay, so the difference between these two is 0.25 inches. So that's going to be my sweep length. So I'm going to put 2.25 in there. What it does, let me go to 2D, is I know I want this back edge to be straight, because on this harpoon rocket right here, it looks straight up and down. So to get it straight up and down with these chord lengths right here, I know that it's swept back 0.25 inches. It might be swept back a little bit more. Let's call it 0.35. And if that's 0.35, I'm going to make this 0.15 so that it's still swept back. Now I'm going to change the semi-span, which is this vertical distance right here. And I'm just moving it down. I'm just kind of like, I'll bring back the harpoon here. These are the only views that we have of it. So I like that. Now its location, I'm going to say the location, we're going to measure the location from the base of the owning part, which is the owning part is this tube. So, and on our rocket, it was at the very end. So that is the owning part. There's our fins. Let's go to the material, and let's make them balsa. And the thickness, I'll leave the thickness alone. The cross section, let's say rounded. And you can see it rounded the edges. If you made it airfoil, you'll see that now it's an airfoil shape. But let's go back to just rounded. These might be a little bit big, or maybe my tube is not long enough. Let's select the color. Those are white. Yeah, we'll make it that color. Okay, so there's my fins. And okay, so that's going okay. My face is on top of them, but I think you get the idea. There's the fins. Now, let's see, we changed the color. Let's make sure that looks okay in 3D. Yeah, okay. I think this rocket might be a little bit longer. My fins are too big. Okay, we're going to say okay to that. Okay, so those are the aft fins. Now we need to do the front fins. And again, there's 4 of those, and these look longer, and they don't look quite as tall as the ones in the back. I'm trying to move this by grabbing my bar. I'll grab it there. Okay, so let's add another set of fins. So we're going to click on the body tube, go to fins again. I'm going to cancel out of the database. Okay, so I was saying, where are my fins? Well, what happened was, if you look closely, there's 2 sets of fins here. There's this one right here that we just added, plus a new one. And you'll notice that it's very similar. Oh, if I look here, you can see our first fin, and here's our second fin. Now, it chose the color white because it remembered that my previous color was white. And I could live with that, but on this particular fin right here, it was very hard to tell. But we know there's 4 of them, so we're just going to do just like we did before and just start changing things. A semi-span. Okay, so now it's a little bit shorter. I think that's okay. Let's move the location. Let's slide it up here. It is looking more and more like a harpoon. I'm going to make these a little, oops, I want to make the semi-span just a smidge smaller. Okay, and the reason for that is I know that fins that are in this position make the rocket less stable. If I go to the 2D view, you can see that before I added these fins, I'm sure that center of pressure, this dot right here, was somewhere back here. But when we added this other set, it moved it forward. And you'll notice that when I move those fins forward, that center of pressure is moving forward as well. And at some point, it would overtake the center of gravity. But we're not there yet. So I'm going to put them like right there. And is my shape okay? That's my question. It looks not too bad. I think I'm going to live with that. The only thing I might change is this sweep angle here. Oops, too much. I'm just tweaking it just a smidge. So I like that. It's a good shape. I'm going to go to my color tab. I'm going to make in 2D color, I'll make it a different color. So it's a little lighter, but you can still see it. All right, so next, let's add, we'll click OK to those fins. I'm going to save my design. I'm going to put it on the desktop. And let's call it the harpoon. And hit save. Just never hurts to save things, right? Okay, so now we're going to add the engine mount so we can put a rocket motor in it. So I'm going to click on the body tube, and then allows me to put an inside tube in there. Again, it looks in the database, and we're going to cancel out of that. I'll make this screen bigger so you can see it. Okay, so we need to select a tube, and I'm going to go to the database. Okay, so why is my database not opening up? Is it behind? Choose from database. Okay, there it is. Okay, so now I know it's going to use, I could use a BT, I could use an 18 millimeter or a 24 millimeter diameter rocket engine. I'm going to go with an 18 just to keep it from going too high. And I'll click OK on that. So here's our tube, and it's this blue one. You can see it's really long. And we're going to change the length of that. So I'm going to start by changing it down to about 2.5, 3.5 inches, somewhere in there. Okay, 3.5 inches. So right now it's right here. Let's change the location. Let's measure from the back of the part, and let's make it 0 inches from the back of the tube. So you can see just by doing that, it moved it all the way back here. It tells me the material is paper. Color, let's make it also white. 2D color, make it that color there. Okay, so there it is. Let's go back to the general tab. Now this is going to be a motor mount tube, and by checking this box right here, we're telling RockSim when we put a motor in it, this is the tube that it goes into. And at this time, we can also actually add a motor, and it's actually a good thing to add a motor as you're designing, because what it does is it moves the center of gravity backwards, and we're always concerned about the relationship between the center of gravity and the center of pressure. That center of gravity has to be in front, it has to be towards the nose. So when you select the motor, what you want to do, if possible, is to put the biggest one in there you can. Why the biggest? Because the biggest one is the heaviest, and the heaviest is going to move the center of gravity further back. So, you know, from my list here, I can go all the way up to a D24. It doesn't tell me my weights, but in general, D motors are heavier than C motors. So I could choose, you know, I'm going to choose that Aerotech D24. I'm going to change it later when we run simulations, but I'm just looking for the weight right now. And the ejection delay, we'll just go with a 7. And it's going to hang out the back 1/2 inch. So engine overhang, which you see right here, is how far the engine is going to hang out the back. So I'll say OK. And you can see now I put that engine in there. And we'll also notice that our center of gravity, which used to be in front of these fins, is now back behind those fins. And this is what we are really concerned about. If that center of gravity gets behind that center of pressure, this rocket's going to go unstable. And we don't want that to happen, so that's why we wanted to load an engine in there. So I'm going to say OK. Now we need some centering rings on that engine mount tube. So I'm going to select the tube and hit centering rings. And again, it looks in the database, but I'm going to cancel out of that. What we noticed here was that this centering ring is inside the tube, and we want it on the outside of the tube. So I'm going to cancel out of that. What that tells me is I've got the wrong tube selected. So I'm going to go back up 1 tube, which is our BT60 size tube, and I'm going to add the centering ring right there. So centering ring button right there. Again, it looks in the database. I'm going to cancel out of that. So now my centering ring is this dark blue line up here at the front. Let me make this bigger. And so it's right here, and you'll notice that we have an outside diameter, but we have no inside diameter. And the reason we don't have that is because we've got this check that says we're going to automatically calculate that inside diameter based on its position in the rocket. So watch as I move the location of that ring. So here's the ring. Let me make it a little bit thicker here. I'll make it 1/8 inch. Let's say it's plywood. So there's the ring. We still don't have an inside diameter. But when I move that centering ring back, and when it gets over the top of the engine mount tube, you'll see that that inside diameter number is going to change. So I don't need to know the dimensions. I just need to know where it's located. So now we do have an inside diameter is 0.740 inches, and the only thing that we don't have selected is the material. And we'll say that this is a paper tube, so I'm scrolling down to paper. Yeah, do we want to change the color? It's in blue in both. Let's make it a little bit yellowish in 3D, and in 2D I want a nice dark color. So that's total black. So here's a deep purple. Click OK. So there's our first ring. Now we need another ring in the back, and let's click OK. And the easiest way to do things is just to do a copy and paste. The only thing that's going to change is the location. And so we're going to highlight it, and then do a right click and say copy. And then come up here to this tube, and we're going to paste it in that tube. So right click and select paste. And now it did add the second centering ring, but its location is exactly on top of the previous one, which is why we're not seeing a second ring in the drawing. So as soon as we edit one of those rings, we're going to call this the front centering ring. And here's the location right now. It's measured from the front of the tube. And I'm going to move it back to here. I want to recess just a little bit inside this tube. The reason we do that is just to make it easier to put the engine clip on. So that's why. 15 minutes left. All right, so there's our ring, and we call it the front centering ring. So we can tell it apart from, well, it's actually the back centering ring. Half centering ring, and click OK. Okay, so now we have that ring in there. The next thing we need is a parachute. So let's add a parachute. So where is this parachute going to go? I want it to go in this tube. So you can just click on the tube, or you can click on the name up here in the parts list. So now I want to add a parachute. So I'm coming down here to parachute. Again, it looks in the database, but we're going to cancel out of that. And we're going to estimate it. So right now it says the descent rate is 85 miles per hour. Let's put that in meters per second, 38. I'd like to see that number under 20. So what it means is I need a bigger parachute than what I have. And so here's our parachute. And what we actually have is a parachute with a 0-inch diameter circle, which is like, it doesn't exist. So let's make this bigger and see what happens. All right, so at a 10-inch, like I said, we want our descent rate at under 15 miles an hour. So now this one, or 15 meters per second. This one's coming down a lot slower than that at 10 inches, but that doesn't seem right. I think I'd like a bigger parachute than that. But while we're doing that, I'm going to select the material as low-density polyethylene. And this is what garbage bags are made out of, if you don't know what low-density polyethylene is. And the shroud line material, we're looking for thread or something really tiny. Okay, here's carpet thread, carpet string. And we need a thickness of the parachute so it has some mass. So let's call it 1 mil. Okay, so now we have a mass of 1 gram. It still says we're coming down really fast. Or really slow. I want to come down a little faster. Why is this parachute? This is such a small parachute. And it's coming down at 17 meters per second. What's that in miles per hour? That's a little fast. Let's come down at 15 miles per hour. There's a 14-inch parachute. Gives me, where am I looking? This for a 14 mile an hour, we need 11 inches. I want to make it a little bit bigger than that. So I'm just going to go here to the diameter. I'm going to make it like a 15-inch. I want to be safe that this thing is going to come down. Now we need to change the location. And again, I'm going to just grab the slider bar. It's going to go somewhere between the front of the engine and the back of the shoulder. So it's okay right there. Okay, and let's change the color. So the 2D color, let's make it purple. And the 3D color, let's make it yellow. So right now, you don't see much difference in the 3D. If I can't see what color my parachute because I can't look through the tube. But I'll say okay. Let's see if I go here. Okay, so here's my parachute right now because it's highlighted. And so that's my parachute. And if I click off of it, and I selected the tube, and now the tube's highlighted. If I click off of that, click on the nose cone, now the nose cone's unhidden. All right, so we got a parachute. Let's add a shock cord. So a shock cord, you'll notice here there's no buttons for shock cord, but you can choose a mass object. So mass object is anything that doesn't have a defined shape but has mass. So I'm going to cancel out of the database. I'm going to say that this, instead of being a general shape, let's call it a shock cord. And for this, I want to use 16th inch braided nylon. And the length of that, so as I'm changing the length, the mass is going up. I'm going to probably want like a 36 inch, somewhere close there. And its location, if I go back to 2D, right now it's right here at the front of the nose. Normally you put it near the parachute somewhere. It's just more convenient there. Okay, so there's my mass object, which is the shock cord. Let's call it the shock cord mass. Click OK. Next, okay, is we added the shock cord. We need an engine block. So this right here is the inside tube, and you'll notice the icon is different from the outside tube. And when we click on it, it highlights the tube in the drawing. But we want to actually change that. This is, what did I say, that we're adding a mass object? I didn't add any mass objects yet. So I need to select the body tube that the mass object's going into. Click on the mass object. And this is the, not a screw eye, it's the crimped engine hook. Right now it's right up here. And let's move it to the base of the rocket. And I think that's actually pretty good. I'll put it right there. So that's going to be your engine hook because we don't have a defined shape for an engine hook here. So, crimped engine hook. Let's click OK. Okay, so this rocket is ready to launch, except it doesn't have a launch lug. So let's put a launch lug on there. So I'm going to select the body tube because that's where it's going to be attached. Come over here to launch lug, and I'm looking for an 1/8 inch launch lug. Click OK, and this screen will allow us to edit that launch lug. So right now it's here at the nose cone. Let's move it back down to about here. Normally you want it like on the center of gravity. Because that's the point where the launch lug is the strongest, because it would take a lot of force to kick it off. You know, normally when you put it down on a launch rod, that is where they snap off. And so if you put it as close to the center of gravity as possible, it's the least likely to snap off there. If you're using 2 launch lugs, span the center of gravity. So you could put one in front, one in the back, and that will give you a nice strong launch lug. Let's look at this from the base. So I'm going to go to a base view right here. And you'll notice that my launch lug is interfering with these fins. So that's where you go to the radial position tab, and you can just slide it around the tube. Let's call it 60, no, this is going to be 45 degrees because it's got 4 fins. So there's my launch lug. I'm okay with that, except for maybe the color. So let's make it that color white, and in 2D, doesn't really matter. I'll make it nice blue, click OK. So we're looking at the base view of the rocket, and click OK. I'm trying to find that launch, there's my launch lug right there, right where I left it. All right, so at this point, the rocket is actually ready to fly. So let's do a flight simulation of our brand new rocket. And we're going to go to the simulation properties. This is where you load your rocket motors and change the weather condition and change the launch site. So I'm going to hit choose engine. All right, so now I got to really pick a motor. So I think I want to get an Estes C6-5. Because I've flown those before and I know what to expect. So I'm going to choose a C6-5. The ignition delay, that is like when you hit the launch button, how long does it take for the rocket to actually move? Well, we want it to move like right away, so we're going to leave that at 0 or blank. The engine overhang, again, it's how much it hangs out the back. We're going to say 1/2 inch, and I like that. It's okay. The other thing that we want to do is confirm that there's no other impediments to this launch. All right, so under flight events, we have one parachute we have to deploy, and let's deploy it at the maximum engine ejection delay. Test criteria, just leave that alone. The values, leave that alone. Oop. Click OK there. What I wanted to do was go to these. Okay, so these are the other conditions. So our starting state, we're on a 72-inch launch rod. So that's 6 feet. It's probably a little tall for this rocket. So we'll drop that down to 36. The launch guide angle from vertical. So if you move this around, you can see I'm moving my launch angle around. Let's do it at 31 degrees from vertical. The azimuth angle, think of this as a compass wheel. North is at 0 degrees, and that's straight up. East is out here, and that is 90 degrees. South is 180, and west is 270. I don't know where I'm launching this thing from yet, but that's going to make a difference. But for right now, we'll just leave it at 0, which means that we're going, well, 0 degrees is to the north. So we're 31 degrees from vertical, and it's angled exactly north. Okay, so that was the starting state. The simulation controls are how RockSim runs the simulation, and I just recommend that you leave it alone. Launch conditions, this is our altitudes and wind speed and pressure. I'm not sure where this launch site is, so I'm going to go to choose a launch site, and it looks in the database, and I've added some. In your database, I realize won't have any. I'm going to choose Pueblo, Colorado, click OK. And here is the parameters for the Pueblo, Colorado. It's at 1,644 meters above sea level. And once you get up there, it's flat, so that's why our landing zone altitude is the same. If you're launching from the top of a mountain and you know the rocket's going to come down the mountain where it lands, you can change that. But normally, just choose the same number. Here's your relative humidity pressures are right there, and I'm not going to change any. Those are going to be fine for me. Next tab to go over is the wind table. We have a 0 mile per hour or 0 meter per second wind at an altitude of 0. So right at ground level, there's no wind. And at 40,000 meters above ground level, we have a wind of 5 miles an hour coming out of the 120 direction. So 120 is between 60 and 180. So it's going to be coming from the southwest or southeast. Going back to launcher conditions, just double checking these. They look okay. These are the default numbers, and this is a standard day. 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 31.1 degrees latitude. And you get the picture. All right, so now we're going to launch this rocket and see what it does. Okay, so it gives us a result, and the result said that the parachute did open, but it's got an arrow in it, which means that the parachute was opening when the rocket had come over the top and was starting to come down. It reached 135 meters, deployed a little bit, actually deployed higher. Oh, no, wait a minute. This is deployment. This is the maximum altitude. So the maximum altitude is 138.4 meters, and it deployed its parachute at 135.21. So this is like really close to Apogee. So that's picking motors pretty good. All right, I better check over here. Come on. Terry says, what's with the ads interrupting the stream? Well, that's what YouTube does. They want their money too. All right, so we launched it, but we got some altitudes, but what does it really look like? Can you tell a lot from the launch just by looking at this number here and that number there? This tells us that it came over the top and it deployed at 135 meters, but what does it look like? To see what it looks like, you click on this right here, and this is the flight profile button. And when you click on it, it opens up. I'm in RockSim Pro, so it's opening up a viewer to see the trajectory. Now, the RockSim Pro, its viewer is a 3D viewer. So everything's in 3D, where RockSim itself is only a 2D viewer. So that's kind of like the major difference. So you can kind of see we've got the rocket, our Harpoon rocket, and we launched it at an angle, and we said we launched it straight north. So here's our compass right down here. So I'm going to move north up to pointing to the top. And now we can see that, yes, our rocket is pointed to the north. So that's good. This cone right here is called the weathercocking cone. And it kind of gives us, the altitude. Why does it do that? How high the rocket's going to go. So it's going to go approximately that high in this view. It's going to start out here, and you can see in the mountain, the distance. In the distance, we have a bunch of mountains, because it's Colorado. So I'm just changing it around. So our rocket is launched from that little tiny red dot right there. And if we click the launch button here, we'll see the rocket taking off. And it's going up, and we aimed it to the north, and yeah, it's going mostly, north is this direction, this diagonal, and that's the direction it took. And then what happened there is we got a wind coming out of the southeast that's pushing our rocket, and it's pushing it towards these trees, and there's a canyon here. This is our canyon. But the rocket actually landed well far short of the canyon, and if you want to speed things along, you can just take the time slider here and move it forward into time. So that's the trajectory, and it's not a bad one, but it's not the greatest either. I would like to see, you see the weathercocking cone right here? I like to see the apogee point, the highest point in the flight, to be inside of that cone, and we're well outside. So that's the thing that I think I would change on this flight. So that was kind of cool. I'm going to close that. I'm going to save my design and just double check what we got going on in the chat because we're almost out of time here. RW says hello from Michigan. He asks, does RockSim have the ability to select a piston launcher? And the answer is no, because we need to figure out how much the piston launcher affects the flight of the rocket. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to impart extra velocity at liftoff, and we don't know what that is. So that's why we can't select it, although you can in RockSim Pro and in the Launch Visualizer, which is our version online, you can select a liftoff velocity. So under starting state, we have a starting velocity here. So we're not starting from 0, we're starting from a little bit higher than 0. So if we start, let's say that rocket was going to leave the launch pad at, or the piston launcher was going to impart 10 miles an hour velocity to this rocket, and then when we launch it again, we'll see it has a different altitude. So our first one was 138 meters, our second one was 146 meters. That's because that piston launcher gave it a little extra kick. It's really hard to estimate how much the piston launcher is going to add, so that's why we don't do that. Larry Legan Dairy says, Tim, don't forget to add the engine block. Okay, so in our design components, he's saying, you know, if I go back to 2D, he says there should be an engine block right here, so we can add that. So we need to first select the tube that it's going into, and I'm trying to click on it. I think this body tube right here is the engine mount tube. Yeah, when I click on it, it selects it. And then we're going to add an engine block right there. And we'll make it a 13 to 18 ring. Oop, I'm looking at the back. So here's the centering ring, or the engine block right now, and we just need to slide it right back here to the front of the engine and click OK. So that's how you add your engine block. And Terry Wheelock says an engine hook has an integrated engine block. An engine hook has an integrated block hook on the other end. Yeah, so that blocks it from going the other way, and that's what this was right here. And RW says, is there a reason a piston launcher is not for sale on the Apogee website? And the answer is, I have designed one. I want to do one, but it requires a fiberglass rod to activate it, because I want to run the wires up through the inside of the hollow fiberglass rod, or it would be a fiberglass tube, not a rod. And I'm sourcing one right now. Yeah, but I'm having a really hard time finding one that's not like so expensive that it would put this price of this piston launcher at a really high price. Because if you're going to buy a piston launcher, you don't want to spend too much money on it. So that's where I am. I'm searching for a fiberglass tube, and I think I've got a source for one, but I haven't placed an order yet. It's going to be, if I do it, it's going to be a 13 millimeter piston launcher tube, because that's what most people use for competition. The NAR, most of their events are 13 millimeter. Doing an 18 millimeter would be possible, but I'll start with the 13 millimeter. When you get up to 18 millimeters, the effect of the piston launcher is not as great as it does for the 13 millimeter, and it's because the rocket's so much heavier because it's bigger. There was probably any other questions? I don't think there's any other questions. So hopefully I got everybody. Today I'm on a time budget because I do have to get to Narum. So I gotta leave here like now. So we're gonna end the broadcast. We won't be here next Friday, which is, I think, August the, let's see, 7 plus 2 is August 9th. We won't be here on August 9th because I will be in Pueblo at Narum. But then we will be back the following week. So 9 and 7 is 16th. August 16th we'll be back. So 2 o'clock on August 16th, which is a Friday, we'll be back for our next episode. So until then, I'll give you a countdown. Say in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go out and launch something. I know I am.